The intervention was my mother's idea. She'd planned it like a state dinner. Sunday brunch at the family estate in Greenwich. Everyone dressed in the soft shades of concern they thought looked compassionate. I could smell the freshly ground Kona coffee and the simmering judgment before I even reached the dining room. Vivian, sweetheart. My mother adjusted the diamond brooch at her collar, the one her own mother had pinned on her at her debut. We're all here because we love you. The all included my older brother Preston in a charcoal chiton suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. My father, half hidden behind the Financial Times, stealing glances at his Vacheron Constantine like he was timing the proceedings. And my sister-in-law Caroline, who hadn't held a real job since her debutante year, but who had very firm convictions about how a woman ought to manage her career. I dressed for the occasion. A soft, slightly faded sweater from a department store sale. Dark jeans with a thinning hem. Old leather flats that had walked 1,000 quiet miles. Let them think I couldn't afford anything else. That made what was coming so much sweeter. We've been watching your little business, Preston began, setting down his fourth espresso. The cramped office near the warehouse district. The hours you keep. The way you've been dodging us at every family event. It's clearly not working, Vivi. Caroline nodded along, her tennis bracelet catching the morning light. There's no shame in admitting defeat. Preston's firm always has space for someone bright to start over. I sipped my own coffee and thought about the real office. The one they'd never seen. 43 floors above the city, glass on 3 sides, overlooking the harbor. I was quietly buying piece by piece. Your father and I, my mother continued, we hate watching you struggle. The little walk-up apartment. That dented hatchback. You could be living properly. Like us, Preston added. By properly, he meant the 7-bedroom in Bedford he'd refinanced 3 times, the cars he leased through his firm, the lifestyle that was about 90% performance. I knew his actual finances. I knew everyone's at this table. We took the liberty, my father finally said, sliding a leather folder across the marble, of having Preston's analysts run the numbers on your company. I opened the folder slowly. The figures inside were neat and meaningless. They had only managed to find Ashcroft Advisory, the small consulting shell I'd kept alive precisely so curious eyes had something to dissect. Their projection puts you in bankruptcy by Q3, Preston said, not bothering to hide his pleasure. But if you let me come in now, we might be able to salvage something. Salvage. I rolled the word around my mouth. The same word he'd used 3 years ago, in a dim Tribeca steakhouse, when he'd cornered 2 of my earliest investors and told them I was cute, but unstable. He'd told everyone I was playing at business. It's time to be realistic, darling, my mother pressed. You're simply not cut out for. Preston's phone buzzed against the marble. He glanced down dismissively. Then his face went very still. The espresso cup in his hand slipped sideways and shattered on the limestone floor. What is it? Caroline reached over and took the phone from him. Her professionally microbladed eyebrows lifted into her hairline. That can't be right. What? My mother demanded. Preston's voice cracked. Why is Vivi's company on the front page of Bloomberg at $12 billion? The room went silent. Before we go on, please subscribe and like this video, my dear listeners. Your support motivates me to tell even more engaging stories. I pulled out my own phone, opening the article I'd known would drop at exactly 9:47 that morning. Quiet visionary Vivian Ashcroft emerges from stealth, Quant Aura Systems valued at $12 billion following oversubscribed Series E. There must be some mistake, my father said, reaching for the phone. A different Ashcroft. No mistake, I said, calmly setting down my cup. Although the valuation is a little soft. We closed a private placement at 13.6 this morning. I reached into my bag and laid a card on the table. Not the modest consulting card my family had seen. The real one. Embossed on heavy stock. Vivian Ashcroft, founder and CEO, Quant Aura Systems. A downtown address. The logo they were now staring at across every financial wire on the planet. But your little office, my mother stammered. A front, I said. Useful for keeping competitors and curious relatives from seeing what I was actually building. Building what? Preston demanded, scrolling so fast his thumb skipped. This says quantum computing, drug discovery, cryptography, materials science, quantum systems for industrial applications, I confirmed. Patents pending in 51 countries. IBM offered us $9 billion in March. We declined. Caroline's perfectly blended foundation had gone bloodless under the cheekbones. All this time, I went on, gently, while you were laughing about my struggling business at Christmas, I was raising over $1 billion in venture capital. While you mocked my dented car, I was hiring the top quantum physicists in the country. And while you were planning this little intervention, I was finalizing partnerships with 3 sovereign wealth funds. My father's hands trembled as he scrolled through the article. Strategic partnerships. Major scientific breakthrough. Defense Department contracts. Healthcare applications. The walk-up apartment you felt so sorry for me living in, I said, smiling slightly. I own the building. Just like I own the warehouse district where my fake little office is. Real estate is a wonderful investment when you know exactly which neighborhoods the tech corridor is about to swallow. Preston stood abruptly. This isn't possible. I would have known. Would you? I raised an eyebrow. Like you knew your firm was about to lose its largest client? He paled. What? Did I forget to mention? I checked my watch. A simple thing on a worn leather strap, also worth more than his Vacheron. Your managing partner is reading the email right now. Quant Aura Systems is terminating its banking, advisory, and treasury management relationships with Ashcroft Capital Partners. Effective immediately. The sound of breaking porcelain made us all turn. My mother had dropped her favorite Limoges teacup. Her hand was pressed over her mouth. Another Bloomberg alert flashed on Preston's phone. Quantora founder Vivian Ashcroft named to Forbes 40 Under 40, the stealth billionaire reshaping computing. Billionaire, Caroline whispered. I stood and smoothed my sad sweater. We should probably discuss how this changes the family dynamic. But not today. I picked up my worn leather bag, actually a custom Berluti I'd had for 10 years, worth more than Preston's car, and walked to the door. Just before I left, I turned back. Oh, Preston. About that junior analyst position. He didn't dare look up. I think I'll pass. Their stunned silence followed me out into the morning sun, where my driver was waiting beside the car I actually drove to the office. A perfect Sunday brunch indeed. The next 48 hours were exactly what I'd expected. The financial press exploded with speculation about the stealth billionaire who had built a quantum computing empire in plain sight. My phone filled with messages from family I hadn't spoken to since I was 19. Aunt Margaret, darling, I always knew you were special. Cousin Theodore, remember our summers at the lake house? Uncle Robert, let's discuss investment opportunities. I sat in my actual office, 43 floors above the city, reviewing the desperate reconciliation attempts with my chief of staff, Rebecca. Your brother tried to get past lobby security 4 times yesterday, she reported, sliding a stack of contracts across my desk. His wife called twice, both times pretending to be from JP Morgan. I smiled and started signing. And my parents? Your mother's been calling every society magazine on the East Coast claiming she was your earliest mentor and most loyal supporter. Rebecca tapped her tablet. Your father has been sitting in his Bentley outside this building for almost 3 hours. Has he figured out I own the building yet? No. He thinks you're renting the penthouse floor. Should I enlighten him? I glanced at the security feed. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not yet. Let's see how long he sits. My phone buzzed with an alert from one of my custom market dashboards. Preston had just walked into Ashcroft Capital's morning all-hands meeting. Right on schedule. You should see this. I pulled up the live feed from their conference room. Another system they didn't know I controlled. On screen, Preston strode to the head of the long table, ready to triage. Before he could open his mouth, his managing partner stood up first. Would anyone here, the partner said, holding up his phone, care to explain to me how our largest client severed all contracts overnight? And why that client happens to be run by Preston's sister? The room erupted. Preston went from cocky to cornered in under a second. I'd seen the look once before. On a school playground when he was 9 and a bigger boy had taken his bike. Losing Quant Aura, The managing partner continued, is a 37% hit to annual revenue. And their newly public profile would have doubled our advisory fees within a year. I can fix this, Preston stammered. She's just playing games. I'll talk to her. Like you talked to her 3 years ago, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. David Park, my head of strategic partnerships, walked in carrying a black Pelican case. When you tried to poison her seed round, David said pleasantly, by quietly telling Andreessen Horowitz that she was emotionally unfit to lead a company, Preston's face went white. How did you? We have the emails, Preston. David set a folder on the conference table. We have the calls you placed to family office contacts warning them away. We have the manufactured rumor you fed the information. It's a remarkably thorough paper trail. I watched Preston sink into a chair as David continued. Quantora Systems isn't just terminating its contracts. We're filing a formal complaint with the SEC about your firm's pattern of market manipulation and tortious interference. Rebecca whistled softly beside me. That's going to leave a scar. He earned it, I said, thinking of the night 3 years ago I'd cried in a parked rental car after his calls had cost me a term sheet. Actions have consequences. My office door opened, and Priya, my general counsel, walked in with another set of documents. Your parents' financial picture, as requested. She set them on my desk. You were right. They're leveraged to the gunnels. The estate, the art collection, the boat in Newport, everything is mortgaged through Ashcroft Capital. And Preston has been managing those investments, I said, scanning the columns. Quietly moving money around to plug holes. Classic Ponzi structure, Priya confirmed. New client funds are subsidizing family losses. If the SEC really opens up his firm, they lose every dollar they think they have. I leaned back, watching the security feed. My father was still in his car 40 floors below. Unless, I said quietly, someone steps in to help. Rebecca's eyebrow lifted. You're not seriously thinking. Family is complicated, I said. But timing is everything. Another Bloomberg alert flashed. Quantora launches new family office advisory unit. Industry veterans join leadership. Right on cue. My phone rang. My mother. Vivian. Her voice was honeyed terror. Darling, we simply must speak about this dreadful misunderstanding. Your father and I are facing financial annihilation if Preston's firm collapses. I finished for her. Which it will, the moment the SEC investigation begins. The pause on the other end was so long I could hear her swallow. How did you? I know everything, Mother. The mortgages. The hidden tax liens. The shell games Preston has been running with your retirement. Did you really think I would never look? Vivian, please, for the first time in my life, I heard genuine fear in her voice. Be at my office tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp. Bring Father and Preston. Leave Caroline at home. This is family business. Your office? But we don't. Look up. Through my window, I watched my father lift his head for the first time in hours and finally see the Quantora logo gleaming on the side of the very building he'd been parked beside. 43rd floor, I said. Don't be late. I ended the call and turned to my team. Priya, prepare the bailout paperwork. Our terms. Rebecca, call our SEC contact. Tell them we found irregularities in Ashcroft Capital's books that we'd like to address privately first. And Preston's managing partner? Rebecca asked. Let him sweat until tomorrow. Fear is a wonderful motivator for cooperation. They left to execute the plan. I stood at the window alone. On my desk, a single photograph from last Thanksgiving sat next to a printed Bloomberg article from that morning. The contrast between the pity in their eyes then and the panic in their voices now was almost poetic. But this wasn't really revenge. It was rebuilding. On my terms this time. Tomorrow I would offer them salvation. But first, they needed to understand exactly who they were dealing with. The quiet daughter they had spent 28 years underestimating wasn't quiet anymore. They arrived at 8:57. My mother in her best Chanel. My father in his crisis management gray. Preston looking like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Lobby security held them for exactly 15 minutes before walking them upstairs. The private elevator opened into the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling glass on 3 sides. The harbor laid out below. I had arranged the seating carefully, them on the low couch, me at my desk on the slightly elevated platform. Power dynamics matter. Your company owns the whole building, my father said, trying to mask his shock with something that almost passed for business curiosity. Among others, I replied, not looking up from the screen where I was watching Ashcroft Capital's stock crater another 5% on the open. Preston, your firm is down 31% since yesterday. Impressive. He shifted on the couch. The market is overreacting. Once I explain. Explain what? I turned the screen toward them. The unauthorized use of client funds? The fabricated quarterly reports? Your offshore accounts in Jersey and Singapore. My mother gasped audibly. My father's composure finally fissured. How did you? 3 years ago, when you tried to sabotage my Series A, I hired the best forensic accountants in the country to find out exactly who was talking to my investors and why. They found you, Preston. And they kept finding things year after year, while you kept running the family's money into hidden holes. I pressed a button. The walls came alive. Documents. Wire transfers. Fabricated audits. Communications between Preston and 3 other firms participating in coordinated short campaigns against early-stage tech companies. Vivian. My mother's voice was small. Surely we can discuss this as a family. Like you discussed my failing business as a family? I stood and walked to the window. Or like Preston discussed me with venture capitalists, telling them I was emotionally fragile and financially incompetent? My father took a half step forward. Whatever Preston did, your mother and I leveraged everything you own through his firm. I turned back. The estate is mortgaged 3 times. The art collection is collateral on a private loan with 26% interest. Even mother's inherited jewelry is sitting in an investment vehicle that doesn't actually exist on paper. My mother's hand flew to the brooch at her collar. That isn't possible. Show them, I said into the air. My system answered instantly. Every wall lit up with a forensic financial map of the Ashcroft family estate, every line item annotated with the year it had been quietly hypothecated. When the SEC investigation becomes public, I continued, you lose everything. The estate. The cars. The membership at the country club where I was never quite welcome enough. The family name will become a case study in how old money buries new fraud. Preston jumped up. You can't prove. Actually, a new voice said, we can prove all of it. David Park walked in carrying a leather binder. He set folders in front of each of them. My sister's quantum systems have been mapping your firm's transactions for 31 months. The evidence is comprehensive. Who is this? My father demanded. David Park. Head of Strategic Partnerships, Quant Aura Systems. And these are your 3 options. I watched my family read. I saw the precise instant each of them understood. My mother's hands began to tremble on the leather. My father's face went the color of the marble floor. Preston looked like he might be physically ill. Option 1, I explained. We submit everything to the SEC tomorrow morning. You face federal charges. Asset seizure. Public humiliation. And almost certainly prison time for Preston. Option 2, David said evenly, is on page 3. You sign the assignment of assets now. You transfer the family holdings to Quantora's new private wealth division. We handle the SEC quietly. We restructure the debt. And we save what is salvageable of the Ashcroft name. You want us to give you control of everything, Preston said. His voice had broken into something thinner than I remembered. I already have control, I corrected gently. I'm offering you a way to keep some dignity. And perhaps, I paused, an opportunity to learn how to build something legitimate for once. My mother looked up from page 4. These terms, we'd be working for you. You'd be working with my company, I clarified. Father, your decades in client relations could be valuable, properly supervised. Mother, your social network might genuinely help our charitable foundation if you can stand to do real work. And Preston. He flinched as I turned to him. You'll start in compliance. Learning federal banking regulations. From the other side of the desk. Minimum wage. No benefits. No bonuses. For at least 18 months. This is revenge, he spat. No. I sat back down. This is rehabilitation. And it is your only chance to avoid prison. My father stood slowly. 40 years of corporate negotiation visible in the way he set his shoulders. And if we sign, you protect the family name. I protect what is worth protecting, I replied. Which begins with the thousands of clients your son has been quietly stealing from. They get made whole first. Then we worry about the family. Time-sensitive offer, David added. The SEC is waiting for our call. My mother brushed something from her cheek without disturbing her makeup. Vivian, when did you become so powerful? I said. Ruthless? Successful. She nodded weakly. I almost smiled. I always was. You just never bothered to look. One by one, they signed. Preston's hand was shaking so badly he had to redo his initials twice. Welcome to Quant Aura Systems, I said as David collected the documents. Security will escort you to HR. Your new positions begin tomorrow. They filed out quietly. 3 broken aristocrats facing a new arithmetic. At the door, my mother turned back. That brunch, she said. When we tried to intervene. You already knew everything then, didn't you? I knew everything years ago, Mother. I picked up my coffee. I was waiting for the right moment to show you. After they left, David lingered. That was almost merciful, he said, considering. Family is complicated, I said, watching their cars being ballet-driven away by my asset recovery team. Sometimes the best revenge is forcing the people who underestimated you to become better than they were. My phone buzzed. Bloomberg wanted an exclusive on Quantora's new private wealth division. Right on cue. Time to show the world what the quiet daughter could really do. 1 month later, I sat in my office reviewing the transformation. The Bloomberg headline read, Quantora Systems disrupts family office management. Modern compliance meets generational wealth. The article didn't mention how my own family was adjusting to their new reality. How my father, stripped of his corner office and his title, now spent his days in client services, supervised by analysts younger than his oldest grandchild. How my mother, her social calendar replaced by an actual job description, was learning slowly, painfully, to run a real charitable foundation that paid out real grants to real students. And Preston. Preston sat in a fluorescent-lit cubicle in the compliance department, reviewing Bank Secrecy Act filings for minimum wage. A long way from the Bedford estate and the corner office at Ashcroft Capital Partners. Your 3 o'clock is here, Rebecca announced, breaking into my thoughts. I nodded at the wall of screens showing Quantora's global operations. How's he doing? 3rd time this week he's stayed past 9. Actually seems to be trying. Interesting. I pulled up Preston's performance file. His supervisor, a 27-year-old analyst named May, had written, genuine effort. Asks real questions. Doesn't pull rank. Send him in. Preston entered differently than he had a month ago. The custom suit was gone, replaced by a clean but unremarkable shirt and slacks. The swagger had vanished along with his black card. He was thinner. His shoulders were down where they belonged. Sit, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. How's compliance? Enlightening. He chose the word carefully. You mean educational about how many laws your firm was breaking? He flinched. But he nodded. Yes. The shortcuts I took. The disclosures we forgot. The conflicts of interest we papered over. I see it differently from this side. I studied him. The brother who had tried to strangle my company in its cradle was now sitting in front of me looking like a man who had finally read the rule book. Your supervisor says you're showing promise. I'm trying to actually learn this. Not fake it the way I used to. My phone buzzed. Another alert from our SEC contact. The quiet restructuring had been formally accepted. Ashcroft Capital would survive as a smaller, supervised entity. Public charges had been avoided. The family name would limp through. Mother called, Preston said suddenly. From her new place. The downsizing had hit my mother hardest. The Greenwich estate sold. The country club membership relinquished. She lived now in a perfectly nice 2-bedroom in a building I happened to own, paid for by her actual foundation salary. How is she adjusting? I asked. He half smiled. She talked about the foundation's work. The new scholarship program. Real excitement. Not the social climbing kind. And father. He says he's connecting with clients honestly for the first time in his career. He sounded. Preston searched for the word. Lighter. And Caroline? He shrugged. Left 3 weeks ago. Couldn't handle the new lifestyle. Probably for the best. I pulled up another file on my monitor. His personal financial records. His credit counseling sessions. His new supervised checking account. Humiliating, I said. But necessary. He straightened. I've learned more about ethical finance in 4 weeks than I did in 15 years of running a desk. Good. I stood and walked to the window. Because I'm offering you a choice. He waited. Tension visible across his shoulder blades. You can stay in compliance. Work your way up slowly. Maybe make associate in 5 years if you don't relapse. I turned back. Or you can join our new family office advisory unit. As a cautionary example. As a what? We're teaching other multi-generational family offices how to transition to modern, ethical wealth management. Your story, the fraud, the unraveling, the lessons learned, could be extraordinarily valuable if you are willing to own it. Publicly. Comprehension dawned in his eyes. You want me to admit everything? To clients. Show them what happens when old money meets modern regulators. Help other families avoid your mistakes. I sat on the edge of my desk. Help them not need a sister like me. He sat very still for a long time. The Preston of 2 months ago would have rejected the idea before I finished saying it. But that Preston was gone. When do I start? I genuinely smiled. Training begins next week. Same salary, but with potential for advancement based on real performance. Not on what your last name used to mean. Why? He asked quietly. After what I did to you. Why offer this? Because you're learning, I said. And because sometimes family deserves a second chance. He nodded carefully, hearing the unspoken weight beneath the words. Just one. Don't waste it. One more thing. I pressed a button. The screens behind me filled with new data. Quantora systems have identified strikingly similar fraud patterns in 14 other family offices across 3 continents. The SEC is interested. You're going after all of them. We're offering them the same choice we gave you. Modernize. Or face extinction. I handed him a folder. Your first assignment. Review these cases. Identify the patterns you recognize from your own experience. Mark the ones we should approach first. He took the folder with something I had never seen on his face before. Respect. The quiet sister who watched and listened and learned, I said, became the one who changed everything. Don't forget it. I won't. After he left, Rebecca brought in the latest market reports. Quantora's stock had doubled again. Our quantum systems were rewriting not just industries, but the way generational wealth itself operated under modern scrutiny. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. The Foundation's scholarship program placed 78 students in research internships today. Real placements. Real students. Thank you for showing me a better way. I saved it. A small validation that some lessons were finally taking hold. On my screen, the global map of Quantora's operations pulsed quietly with activity. Each light a piece of change. Innovation. Progress. The quiet daughter had built something revolutionary. Something that would reshape not only her family's legacy, but the entire architecture of wealth and power. And yes, I was just getting started. But this time, I was not starting alone. This time, I was bringing everyone else into the future. Whether they were ready for it or not.